Hello, BookTube. I've talked before on this channel about the corrosive effect of peer pressure and FOMO here on BookTube. Mostly ironically, because we're largely free of that on this little corner of BookTube, long may it rain. But one thing I always notice every week is that several of the real cool kid channels have a kind of portmanteau, everything but the kitchen sink collected, looking back kind of chatty discussion video that they do every week. And I love watching those videos, and every time I watch one and love it, I always think, my first thought is always, boy, I wish I had something like that for this channel. That'd be a lot of fun. Then I remember, that I had something like that long before any of the people that I watched did. I have done collected videos, many different types on this channel, including for a long time Megastuff videos, where I would just throw everything in under a few different headings and just chat to sort of pull a string on the whole week. And I want to try that today. I've tried these Megastuff videos many times. I want to try that today and see if maybe I can make it regular. Because if I enjoy watching those videos by others, I have to think that some people might enjoy watching them from me. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a Megastuff video for the 28th of August, 2021, today. We're going to start off with broad categories. So the broadest category of all will be the world. What's happening in the world. And I don't know if this is an American-centric viewpoint or not. I tend to think not from the overseas news coverage that I've been watching. But I think the number one world story is the chaotic withdrawal of America from Afghanistan. With the sort of shot and chaser event of that suicide bombing and shooting in Kabul that immediately followed it, while people were crowding around desperately trying to get on airplanes or to get through checkpoints or whatnot. There was a suicide bombing, explosions, lots of people dead, lots of U.S. service people, and lots of Afghanis. And that's set against the backdrop of the bigger story of President Biden getting America out of Afghanistan, just saying, we're done. And evacuating as many people as they can. They're evacuating tons and tons of people. As far as I know, that's still going on. Not just Americans who are being told, if you're going to stay in the country, keep to yourself for a while, wait for things to calm down. And if you're trying to get out of the country, we'll try to expedite that. But you're going to get to the airport and find literal mobs of people trying to get on the few planes that are coming and going. And also thousands and thousands of Afghan partisans that took the side of America for 20 years as guides, as drivers, as translators, as researchers, as liaisons with villages. All of those people know perfectly well what their fate is under the Taliban. They know perfectly well that sooner or later their name will be on a list. Probably sooner rather than later. It seems to be the only thing the Taliban are really interested in at first, is exacting revenge on their enemies. Then they'll set up some sort of ramshackle state and clamp down on outside news coverage, and the minute the world's vision is dim, they will imprison and sell all the women, send all the young boys to military madrasas to make sure that they grow up hating America, that sort of thing. I think the Taliban is a little bit more savvy on the international stage than they used to be, so they realize they can't do all that right away. They can't just be horrible bad guys right away, but it's pretty bad. Anyone who thinks, as so many newscasters have said, anyone who thinks the Taliban are quote-unquote keeping their promises in these first weeks is just delusional. There's a right and wrong in the universe, and the distinction between the two is not hard to make. The Taliban are bad guys. There aren't any women. They're bad guys. They aren't going to keep their word, and they aren't going to do anything that doesn't strike anybody else anywhere in the world as anything other than barbaric. And they have taken over the country. So the thousands of Afghan loyalists to America, to the American cause, to an enlightened or democratic Afghanistan, they're in the crosshairs, and they all know it. That's why you've seen some of that amazing footage of Afghans running alongside planes on tarmacs, of grabbing onto plane wheel wells in an attempt to just, I don't even know, fly away with the plane at 30,000 feet. And of course, falling to their deaths. There's tons and tons of footage that's just horrific. So that is the story that is gripping the world, is the American withdrawal from Afghanistan. And like I mentioned earlier on this channel, I've been appalled at the news coverage. Just appalled at what I've been seeing. Just especially the mainstream news that for 5 years have been called the enemy of the American people by first the president and then the ex-president, Donald Trump. When he was president for 4 years, he said they're the enemy of the American people, and was perfectly willing to elaborate on that in private, that, of course, what do you do with the enemy of the American people? You attack them, you kill them. For 4 years, while Trump was president, every journalist in this country was fair game for any kind of radical attack. At rallies, on the street, at their homes. And yet, the minute that's over, they seem to relish the idea of attacking the Biden administration. Joe Biden's quote, one of his quotes on the subject, some of his quotes have been unfortunate, but one of his quotes on the subject was a classic Joe Biden quote. It was, "I don't see this ever happening under any administration, at any time, under any circumstances, where it wouldn't be chaos." So we're dealing with the chaos. And, the more I thought about it, the more I've wondered in the week that I've been trying to keep up with the news. The more I thought about it, the more I tried to picture what would the situation. There's an idea in the mind of the journalists that are just going at Joe Biden's administration with pitches and torches. What would their idea of a perfect scenario have been? How can they imagine this would have happened without chaos? No one expected. The reason for the chaos is because no one expected the Afghan forces in Afghanistan to just fold and go home. No one expected that to happen in a week. An evacuation was always part of the plan, but it would have been a lot less chaotic, a lot more orderly, if the Afghan armed forces and the president and local governors hadn't just immediately made deals to hand over their weapons and their administration to the Taliban as they rolled in on jeeps. No one expected that to happen in a week. Anyway, that's the world news. I've been watching it carefully. I have been absolutely disgusted, more so than usual, by right-wing propagandists on cable and on YouTube, just saying, well, you know what's going to happen, huh? We're going to invite in all these Afghan refugees, and they're all going to show up in your town. Your town. Tucker Carlson saying that. They'll all be coming to a town, probably yours. Revolting. Absolutely revolting, especially since it's so openly hypocritical. Those same hateful pundits, Tucker Carlson or all of them, the rogues gallery of them, they would have been, there was no way for Biden to win in this issue with them. They would either have said, oh, great, he's going to flood the country with Afghan refugees, or they would have said, oh, what a heartless bastard, he's not letting any Afghan refugees in. It would have been that either way. And I don't watch these people except in clips on other shows, but it still makes my blood boil. So that's the world stage. Then on the U.S. stage, we have a story. I mentioned it yesterday on my Manatee Monday with Deb, and it's only gotten worse. And that is Hurricane Ida, what will be Hurricane Ida. Currently making its way through the Gulf and headed towards the Gulf Coast of America. So this is, I mentioned yesterday in that talk with Deb, it was very long, so you might not have listened to it, but the Gulf Coast surface temperatures of the water is very warm and very placid. It's what hurricanes love to feed on. It's what makes them grow nice and big. And there's no mid-Atlantic current to stop that from happening the way it did with Henri, the way the mid-Atlantic current could weaken and then drastically weaken on Henri, the last hurricane to make landfall. There's nothing like that here. So I think it's entirely likely, it might not happen, I hope it doesn't happen, but I think it's entirely likely that Ida will strike New Orleans, the Louisiana shore, maybe the border of Alabama, that Ida will strike the Gulf Coast as a Category 4 hurricane. Which, if you just know these things from numbers, from categories, if you've never experienced something close to that, then you just don't have any idea. A neat label like Category 4 just doesn't do it justice. You can't stand upright in a Category 4 hurricane, and your buildings don't stand up. You can't live, if your house manages to survive a Category 4 hurricane relatively intact, you can't live in it when the hurricane's over. Don't be mistaken. Don't think we'll hide under a tarp in the basement. It would be absolutely devastating. And not just the hurricane, but the storm surge, which would be 10, 15, 20 feet. And the best case scenario here is that the storm would go somewhere else, but the storm is in the Gulf, so it can't go anywhere else. It has to make landfall. And another best case scenario would be that the storm would drastically weaken before it makes landfall, and there are no factors involved. It might still do that. God willing, it does. But there are no factors, unlike with Henri, there are no factors between it and the shore that would cause it to weaken. So it probably won't. It will probably strengthen. It has all that time, all that hot water, the closer you get to shore. Ida could easily strike Sunday night as a Category 4 hurricane. And that is horrifying to think of, especially since you have officials in New Orleans, you have officials in Louisiana saying, we don't have time to evacuate. What are you there for? Honestly, why do you have the corner office and the mahogany desk? Why are you drawing a salary if you don't have time to evacuate your people from a Category 4 hurricane? The absolute worst case scenario here is, from satellite, Ida looks like a smaller version of Katrina. And Katrina ended a presidency and defined an era. Bodies floating face down on American streets, bloating in the sun because no one could retrieve them. Thousands of people displaced. A massive, massive catastrophe that did as much as anything to cost George Bush any kind of post-presidency reputation. The worst case scenario here is that, I mean, a hurricane doesn't have to be Katrina size to do that kind of damage. Category 4 hurricane striking the Gulf Coast will do that kind of damage. I just have to hope that Biden is paying attention. I know he has other things on his mind, but I have to hope that he's paying attention and that he gets right on this. Put somebody, a non-political, in charge of the FEMA response team and get them in there right away. As soon as the storm has gone inland, get them in there right away. Get them in there now to get people out. It doesn't matter if you're dragging them kicking and screaming. At least they'll be alive when it's over. A lot of people can't evacuate from the low-lying areas that are directly in the storm's path because they don't have the money to do it. I mean, what about you? Listening to me right now. Some of you, I'm sure, will be lucky enough to answer yes. But if I ask you, you have to be out of your house by Sunday night, by supper time on Sunday. It's morning on Saturday. You have to be out of your house by supper time on Sunday, and you have to be prepared to be out of your house 4 days. Could you do it? Would you have a place to go? Would you have the money to do it? What if you don't have a place to go? If you don't have a place to go, you need the money for those accommodations. Do you have that sitting aside? Are you able to just pull up sticks and go somewhere for 5 days? A lot of people in the path of this storm cannot do that. That's what the state's emergency response is for. And of course, COVID complicates everything because all of those areas have miserable COVID vaccination rates. So this is, no pun intended, but a perfect storm of catastrophe. We could be looking at a major, major catastrophe when dawn breaks on Monday. And so Ida is on my mind on the American stage. Ida is very much on my mind. And I'll be watching it extremely closely. It's not going to affect New England at all. It's going to blow itself out over land. We won't get even a drop of rain out of the whole thing. But it's much worse than Henri. So no matter what happens, it's going to be worse than Henri because it has to make landfall. It has to go somewhere. It's not going to dissipate. And it's not going to go out to sea. It can't go out to sea anymore. So I'll be watching. And those of you who are in the strike zone of Ida, if any of you are watching me now, I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear. There's nothing I can do for you from Boston, but I'd love to hear from you. What are you doing? What preparations are you taking? Are you hunkering down? Are you able to leave? Or are you just going to stay? If you have old people that you're traveling with or young kids, you, quite apart from the expense, you might not want to put them at risk of COVID to leave the path of a deadly storm. If you're in that strike zone or near it, I would love to hear from you. Either comment on this video or simply email me. On the email. Yeah, so the email is another point. It's not part really of a Megastuff video, but I leave my email on every video. Okay, since I just mentioned people emailing them, I might as well make a little parenthetical here. I leave my email on every video. Okay, it's my inbox. It's not a junk email. It's not rerouted anywhere. It's not looked at by a second cousin once removed or anything like that. That's an AdSense fake YouTuber thing to do. It's just my inbox. And you are welcome to email me about any subject at all, but use that email. Don't email me through Open Letters Review. Don't email me through stevedonoghue.com. I'm leaving you my inbox email. That's the email you should use. I admit, I know it sounds a little bit snitty, but I've got a little bit tired of emailing people back and saying, why didn't you use the email that's right there on the video you're responding to? Why did you go and look for a different email? I've got a little bit tired of doing that, so I'm not going to do that anymore. If you don't use the email that I include on every video, I simply won't respond. That's all. I'll just delete them. That's all. I'm getting tired of making a fairly obvious point, so I won't do it. But the email that I have on this video, absolutely email me, especially about Ida. If you are affected by Ida, I would love to hear from you. So anyway, that is the US. Then we'll move down to YouTube, to general YouTube. Now, there are 80 billion channels on YouTube. I subscribe to around 1,000 YouTube channels, and 800 or so of those are BookTube channels. So that leaves 200 channels that are updated once in a while, tech channels and animal channels and that sort of thing, and also comic book channels. And that is the thing that struck me this week, is there's a huge storm going on in the comic book world, certain avenues of the comic book world, because recently Robin, the teen sidekick of Batman, there are many Robins. There have been many Robins. The one whose secret identity is Tim Drake. He's been around for 30 years. He's one of the more popular Robins. Recently, in a Batman comic, he came out as gay. It had been in fan fiction for quite some time. It had been in fan community chat boards for quite some time. But now it's canon that Batman has a gay sidekick. And it has caused an uproar. in the broader YouTube, it has caused an uproar. A whole bunch of comic analysis channels talking about the long, hinted, fainted history, the coded history of this change in the character. How maybe it's not that big a change. A whole bunch of reactionary channels saying this is the end of the world as we know it. This is 21st century SJW political agenda being rammed down our throats, no pun intended, and that we won't buy any of this stuff. We won't pay any attention to it anymore. It's been fascinating watching that debate, and of course, fuel got flung on that fire because recently there is now a rumor that John Kent, the son of Clark Kent and Lois Lane, who has taken on the mantle of Superman. There is a Superman, the son of Kal-El, ongoing comic book. I read the first issue, and I haven't got the second issue yet. I keep meaning to bother Mark Richardson and his long-suffering wife to get them to get those issues at their local comic shop, because I still haven't managed to put the comic shop back in my routine. But that John Kent, through various time travel exploits, is now a teenager. He's not a boy like Batman's son Damian Wayne, who's also Robin, but who's apparently straight. We don't know, one way or another. There's a rumor now that DC intends to make that John Kent, Superman's son, gay. So those two things have caused an uproar in the comics discussion world. Since I'm not invested in these characters at all, I've been able to watch for good points on both sides, just to see even the most reactionary sort of quasi alt-right comic book channel will make some good points on pandering, on fan service for people who aren't fans, for virtue signaling and box checking, that sort of thing. And the long savants of Tim Drake, who've loved the character for a long time, quite a few of those are saying they're okay with it. Yes, it looks like he's been heterosexual for 30 years and had a rather famous love affair with another superhero, but the way the character's been in the last 10 years, this kind of makes sense. That 10 years is a long time for foregrounding. It's been fascinating. It's been a fascinating debate to watch. I'm sure that when DC finally does officially make the announcement that John Kent, Superman, is gay, the announcement will be Superman is gay, and the broader media outlets won't care about the distinction between Superman or his son. The headline will be Superman is gay, and I'm sure that once that happens, I will be bombarded with emails from friends and distant acquaintances saying, "Hey, did you see this?" I'm sure that will happen. So that was YouTube. That's the only thing on YouTube that I'm gonna talk about. I could go on at length, but in this last week, I'm extending the realm of this Megastuff video back a week or so. And in this last week, mostly what I've watched has been BookTube. So we'll finish up with BookTube. Quite a bit of stuff on BookTube that I want to talk about. The first of which involves this channel. A few involve this channel. I noticed this channel is creeping towards 11 8.5 thousand subscribers. And that's bad, right? We're approaching 1,100, 500 subscribers. Halfway to 12K, but we have already established on this channel that this is a 12-nay channel. We're never going to reach 12K. 12K is the big time. We're never going to get there. We're going to stay nice and cozy and small, with me as the unquestioned overlord of my legions of Donohuguenots. We're not going to get to 12,000. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Just think about this video. It's wandering, it's meandering, it's pointless. It's got a cute dog in the background, but I just thought I'd point that out. Some of you new people are getting a little excessive subscribing to the channel. You can watch without subscribing. I've already determined that this is a 12-nay channel. Okay? But then we can move on. A couple of events that I wanted to mention, that I've mentioned many times before. I'm part of an ongoing event called Book Trek 2021. It's a lot of fun, where myself and a group of other booktubers are reading Star Trek fiction for the rest of the year. So we're starting with the original series. That's the rest of August. Then we move on to The Next Generation, then Deep Space Nine, then Voyager, and then Star Trek Enterprise to end out the year. We're reading the novels, short stories, comics, whatever, associated with those franchises, and talking about them. Most of the talk is happening on Voxer, not for booktube consumption. And quite a bit of the Voxer talk recently has involved mankinis. You don't want to know, trust me. But I think a Zoom conversation is in the works. Maybe for tomorrow. I'm sure that it will happen eventually. All my co-hosts are busy people. I'm not, but they are. So arranging it is up. Oop. Hi, baby. Oh, goodness. Oh, hi, baby. How you doing? How's the little bee? So Book Trek 2021, something for, booktube related that I wanted to mention. Another one is Mid-Year Mystery Madness. A lot of you will know that I participate every year in March Mystery Madness, a celebration of murder mysteries. I absolutely love murder mysteries. And there's a big booktube event every March about murder mysteries. I try to participate. I can sometimes be a wayward or oblivious co-host for booktube events. And Lizzie Faye, Elizabeth at Lizzie Faye Loves Books, has been the soul of patience as far as that is concerned. She has emailed me basically to say, and actually she's been doing this for years, saying, if you want to participate, I know your heart's in the right place. You might not be great with the punctilious details, but please participate to your heart's content. And I really want to, because this is great. She and a few other co-hosts decided that March was too long to wait in between Mystery Fests. So we're doing Mid-Year Mystery Madness in September. 1 week in September, I think the 18th to the 24th, something like that. We're dealing with subgenre September, where you don't just read murder mysteries, you read a subgenre of murder mysteries. Is it a romantic murder mystery? Is it a cozy mystery? Is it a hard-boiled mystery? Is it a future mystery? Supernatural mystery? Is it a historical mystery? And my own twist. I'm adding 2 twists that aren't part of the event, but they're both fairly typical of me. The first twist that I'm suggesting, I'm encouraging you to do, is to read a subgenre of murder mysteries that you don't read usually, that you maybe even say you don't like. Try a subgenre that you typically say you don't like and see if maybe you like it. Try a new example of it and see if maybe you like it. That's one wrinkle that I'm adding. And of course, the other wrinkle is the ultimate Steve wrinkle, which is to do it all month. Just for 1 week. Do it all month. Let's talk about mysteries all the month of September. A subgenre of mysteries. Be a lot of fun. You can count on some videos from me, so I thought I'd mention that as well. And then we'll get to individual booktube channels. And I admit, this last week on booktube has had some rough sailing for me. It's had some great stuff as well, but some rough sailing. And I'm not going to shy away from that in Megastuff videos. So for the purposes of just this Megastuff video, I'm going to talk about auto watch channels of mine. Like I said, I subscribe to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of booktube channels. And in the course of a day or a week, I will see that someone's uploaded a new video and I'll think, okay, well, I'll get to that. Okay, there's another one, I'll get to that. Okay, that looks good, I'll get to that. But there is a handful. Out of those hundreds, there's a handful of channels that I just immediately watch. If I see that a new video is up, I just immediately watch it. I don't say, I'll get to it. It's an auto watch. So I'm going to concentrate on those. Just a few of those for this video instead of just broadly talking about BookTube. So the first video, I'll leave links to these. The first one that I want to mention is Tom L.A. Books, who is, some of you will know, taking his viewers through a canto-by-canto reading of the Divine Comedy. And he is now in Purgatorio, and he's not just in Purgatorio, he's in Canto 16 and Canto 17, the center of the whole of the Commedia. And his video on Canto 17 is amazing. I mean, they all are. They're all amazing, but his is just amazing. Believe you me, Dante knew where he was in his narrative. The Commedia is extremely numerological. It's no mistake what's happening, and they have what's happening in, I would say, those two cantos, as he mentions in this video. There's some contention as to what counts as the actual middle. I think Dante knew there would be contention. I think he had a little bit of contention in his own head. So there are resonances in both 16 and 17 that just reverberate forwards and backwards through the whole of the poem. It's amazing to listen to Tom talk about these things. If you haven't been following, you could, I'm sure he's made a playlist, or somebody has. You should binge these things. You'll never have a better guide through the Divine Comedy than Tom. So I just thought I'd mention it, and I'll leave a link to it. Also, another auto watch is very much not reciprocated in this case. I don't need it to be. I realize that thanks to my introduction to BookTube and also just the tenor of this channel, I'm not going to be everybody's cup of tea. If it's the tenor of the channel, I'm okay with that, because that's me, and we can't all get along. We can't all be auto watches to each other. If it's the way that I was introduced to BookTube, this is my trial by fire, this ridiculous label of being a hashtag fake reader girl and a hashtag BookTube sexist and whatnot. I'm a lot less okay with that. All the people that I'm talking about are intelligent people. If you watch 2 of my videos, much less 10, much less 1,000, you're going to know that hashtag was, sheep tip, and that is not me. And if you're still operating under those impressions, that's after this much time and this many videos, it's going to start. I would look a lot less kindly on that. But one way or another, my auto-click channels don't have to be have me as an auto-click channel, and that's a perfect example is this next one, Alexa Donne, who's a published author on BookTube, has a fantastic writing-related channel, very entertaining to listen to, and she did a video just recently on competition in the publishing world, and it's wonderful, just fantastic. Whether you're part of the publishing world or not, you're going to find it fascinating. So I thought I would add that as well. And another auto-click for me would be Juan at Just One Reader. He did sort of a recent reads video, the kind where you're holding a stack of videos in the thumbnail. And it was really, really good. All of his videos are really wonderful. Watching him explore books just with his brain, but also with his heart and with occasional song is just wonderful to do. And with channels like that, I always secretly hope that when they bring up an author I don't like, they will not parrot my opinions about not liking the author, but actually change my mind. I secretly hope that will happen. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes my reactions to an author are pretty solid. They come from an extensive examination of that author. They're not just a bad impression or, an undigested bit of bacon or anything like that. And so when I saw that Juan was going to talk in this video about, among other authors, Terry Pratchett, who has never done anything for me at all, never done anything at all, an author who titled a book Thud, an author who titled a book Guards, an author, in other words, who's looking at the cliches of lightweight, stupid fantasy novels and playing lightweight, stupid games with them, a kind of fantasy version of Douglas Adams. He's never done anything for me. Nothing that he's ever written has done anything for me. I know he's revered, but his books have never done anything for me. And when I saw he was going to be part of the books that Juan was talking about, I thought, okay, well, I've been watching Juan for years. That's the thing with a lot of these channels. I've been watching these people for years. And I wouldn't still be watching them if I didn't think, not that they agree with me all the time, but here's a real reader. Here's someone who has the ability to change my mind about something. I thought, okay, well, he's going to talk about it. Maybe he'll change my mind. But no. No, when he got to Terry Pratchett in this video, Juan says not only did he not like the book that he read, but that he's pretty sure now that he doesn't like Terry Pratchett. And will probably shunt the author aside. Knowing him the way I know him from his videos, I'm betting that's not permanent. But it'll probably be a while before he tries to give Terry Pratchett another try. So I didn't actually have my opinions changed. It was satisfying in a way to watch him give this book a fair shake and just come away not liking it. But I wanted to include that anyway because I was paying extra attention. Ooh, Terry Pratchett, are you maybe going to come up with an angle that I didn't see? But it didn't happen this time. It may happen next time. It's happened on Juan's channel more than once for me. Then we're going to get to the last two videos. We'll end on a bit of a. Okay, I don't want to shout over this. I don't have any idea what's going on here. It's 10 vehicles, and they're not. It's 10 vehicles. It's fire engines, police, and ambulances. There is no emergency. There is no emergency. So I don't know where they're going, but I think it's done now. So we'll go back to the Megastuff video. And what would a Megastuff video be? Without completely intrusive, forces me to stop speaking street noise. So we'll finish up with 2 videos. I said that, you know, I agree and disagree with a lot of BookTube, and I agree and disagree with a lot of my auto watch booktubers as well. There's compared to the number of BookTube channels I subscribe to, the auto watches are a minuscule fraction. You have to be doing something that I really appreciate to be an auto watch author, and these last 2 are auto watch authors, and I appreciate their channels. I want to stress that now, during, and after. But oh my, the videos that they did this week. The first one was Brian at Bookish, my well-known arch enemy, my eyebrow baby. Did a video on dead racist authors. The thumbnail is H.P. Lovecraft. And it's typical Brian. It's extremely thoughtful. It's extremely well balanced. And I was howling. Just howling in outrage the whole time. One of the reasons that I didn't leave a comment on, ordinarily I like nothing better than picking a fight with him in his own comments field. And then again, any of you who are new to this little corner of BookTube, I want to stress, he likes it too. We're friends. But it was too big a subject for a comment section. I like nothing better than to have a discussion. But some people aren't as comfortable speaking off the cuff as I am. But it was a balanced, fair, intelligent look at what to do with authors who are either unconsciously trafficking in the racism of their time or who are consciously promulgating the racism of their time. What do we do with authors like that? And Brian stresses over and over again in his video that he's not telling everyone not to read them. You can still read these authors. He suggests in his video that maybe in schools you might not want to assign Huck Finn without assigning an alternative. I guess there are completely 21st century Twitter-approved PC alternatives to Mark Twain writing in Mark Twain's day. I don't know of any. I know of the literature of Mark Twain's day just about as well as it can be known. I don't know of any. But I guess there must be some, or maybe the option would be that you just don't read Huck Finn, for instance. And I was complaining about this quite a bit to my journal and to friends of mine. And one of the questions that I had there is, well, how is the teacher going to characterize that, right? So you have a classroom of 13-year-olds. Your next book that you're assigned to read, that you have your homework, you're assigned reading, is, well, it's Huck Finn or it's this other book, and you have an alternative to Huck Finn if you want it. I'm not going to make you read Huck Finn. What's the very first question those students are going to ask? Why do we have an alternative to this book? What's wrong with Huck Finn? And the only answer the teacher can give is that it's racist, and it isn't. So this kind of creating an anodyne alternate category. So, oh, you want to read the racist book? Okay, well, you're free to do that, please. That is a quick step from there to banning and burning, and I think Brian must on some level know that. And also one of the most egregious notes in his video, which again was very thoughtful. It's well worth your time to watch. I loved the video and I love his channel. I want to stress that this is not a hit job. But another one of the really telling notes was him drawing a demarcation of old, benighted, unacceptable literature that we can maybe read with forensics, with forceps, like scientists in a laboratory. We're not expecting it to move you. We don't want you to love it. But we can examine it to maybe understand from a remove with sort of plastic gloves on what it says about its era. And then there are the real books that you don't have to read that way because they are in the Enlightened Age, and it just so happens the Enlightened Age is 1960. And Matt at Paperback Junkie in his response video to Brian's video, said, in the midst of a fusillade of F-bombs, he said, what I suspect is actually true, which is it's not 1960, it's 2000. Or something really, it's the 21st century that started saying, well, all the rest of you don't know any better, but we do. The thing that bothered me, the main thing that bothered me about dead racist authors was the arrogant condescension that was baked into the position. I'm not saying Brian is arrogant or condescending. Far from it. But there's a baked-in arrogant condescension in this whole stance that you are looking at the literature of the past from the enlightened present. And I believe that Brian's argument got that, just imported wholesale from areas of, especially the internet, social media, where the possessors of that opinion really do think it. I don't think Brian does. I don't think he thinks he's any smarter than Geoffrey Chaucer. But I think he imported that argument from precincts of online Twitter and book Twitter and also Goodreads, where the people who have that argument really do think it. They think, well, the world was crappy before I was born, and now that I'm here, things are better. And I just rebelled against that completely, just completely. It is such a narrow, I've said this about it before, not in Brian's case, but in similar arguments. It's such a narrow and fearful way to read. It's such a timid way to read. It's such a childish way to read. It isn't necessary at all. I realize it's been raised to the level of godhood in the 21st century, but it's totally unnecessary to even think about these things to read. Reading a racist author is not going to make you racist. And if it's going to make you racist in the eyes of some people who are going to instantly call you racist if you like the book, it's better to dump those people than to dump the books. Right? A person who's willing to call a stranger a racist, a horrible accusation, based on what they read, is someone you should not be listening to. Not only will reading racist books not make you racist or signal in any way that you are racist sympathetic, but also a racist writing a book is not necessarily going to write a bad book. A book that isn't worth canonizing, a book that isn't worth immortalizing. Books aren't harmful. It's what you do with them that's harmful. A brilliant author can write a racist book. And the final note of the arrogant condescension that, once again, I am not imputing to Brian. I am imputing it to the people I think informed the argument he is using. That is a difference. I am not imputing these things to Brian himself. But another condescension that's baked right into this whole stance is that progression has nowhere further to go. We can now see a clear blueprint for what a perfectly enlightened world will be. No one will hold any position of power who is not a black lesbian. Cis people who are not trans, will hold no positions of power. We're not there yet, but oh my, we can see it. We can see that blessed day. We can see the promised land. I might not get there with you. I can't. I wouldn't be allowed in. but we can see what it is, and it's close. And there's nothing after that. So we have reached moral enlightenment and are free to look back on the previous 17 centuries and say, oh, be better. Not a good look. Yikes. When actually it takes a moment's thought. If you're not a condescending, arrogant git, which Brian is not, and the people who made this argument are, it takes a moment's thought to realize that 200 years from now, people are going to look back on this era and say they were morally benighted. Eras tend to do that. The people in the books that are sanctioned, the books that were written after 1960, I guarantee you, commit plenty of sins that future generations, future centuries, are going to look back on and say, oh my God, you're not reading that, are you? I guess it's okay if you want that label, but I wouldn't risk it. Do the characters, as I've mentioned many times on this channel, do the characters in your sanctioned novels eat factory farm meat? Do they drink milk? Do they drink alcohol? Do they smoke in the presence of children? Do they have children? And on and on and on. Do they keep pets? Do they keep livestock? Do they drive a car? A million things you can think of. My pet example, the one I always haul out is, do they use artificial intelligence without its permission? Any one of those things, or more likely something that no one's thinking about now, will be the grist for moral condescension in 200 years. So you're never free, which means that if you look at literature this way, it's best not to read. And I actually don't agree with that at all. So I didn't agree with virtually any of the larger points in Brian's video, but I recommend it to you because it's really well done. It's really thoughtful. It's really balanced. So at the beginning, the middle, and now the end, I want to repeat, I'm not attacking Brian. Okay? I'm attacking the meta ideas in his video, which I think are about as wrong a way to approach reading as it gets. And then we get to the last video. I promise not every Megastuff video. I'll do another of these next weekend and see if it works. But I promise they won't all end on downers. But there's another auto watch channel that I watch. I have loved for years. That is Shawn the Book Maniac. I have learned so much from his honest, open readings. He doesn't care about received opinion. He doesn't care about the canon. He doesn't care about anything. He goes at these books to test them on their own grounds as literature. And usually he does it in a completely even-handed way, which means I've learned a lot from watching him react to books, including books I know really well. But not in his latest video. One of his latest videos, no. One of his latest videos was a gut punch. And it need not have been. He did a video on the collected short stories of Eudora Welty. He's been doing a buddy read with Brian at Bookish of the collected short stories of Eudora Welty. And they bailed. They stopped their buddy read. They bailed on the collected stories of Eudora Welty. Those of you who aren't familiar with booktube terminology, bailing means not just, I don't have time because the kids have dental appointments. It means this book is not worth continuing. I'm intentionally going to stop reading it. And I was stunned with that, and I was willing to let it go. And then Shawn made a video in which he not only says these stories just weren't resonating with me, I wasn't getting along with any but a handful of them. I didn't like a lot of the echoes or terminology that was in them. They just weren't for me, so I just bailed on the book. He has often said that about books, including books where I'm saying to the video, oh, come on. You can't bail on this. It's really, really good. But I'm perfectly happy to have it happen and call him BookTube's Empress of Bailings because that's how he's framing it. This wasn't working for me at all. I just didn't like anything that was going on, and life's too short. That's the philosophy of his bailing in the first place, is that life's too short to make yourself wade through books that aren't pleasing you. Okay, fine. I was a little bit more iffy about that when Brian did it, because Brian is also involved in Faulkner and August. But I was concentrating on Shawn, and I was okay until he went further in his video and said, this is a boring author. This is a shitty author. Not just that he's not getting along with Eudora Welty's short stories and so is going to put down his collected stories, but that this person shouldn't have written short fiction at all, that the stories are really bad. And that reaction to Eudora Welty's short stories is simply wrong. I'm not talking about argument from ad populo. I'm not talking about all the critics who are virtually universal in saying this is one of the greatest American practitioners of short stories to ever put pen to paper. I'm not talking even ad populo about all the booktubers or critics who love and venerate Eudora Welty. Not just one or two stories, but almost all the stories in the collected stories. I'm not talking about them. I'm just talking about the stories on the page themselves. That reaction of Shawn's, I want people to watch this video. I'll leave a link to it. I want you to pay attention to the reasons why he said these things didn't resonate with him, the reasons why he thought they worked his, on his nerves or whatnot. But I don't want you to pay attention when he says that they are bad. They are not bad. I don't know where that comes from. Saying that Eudora Welty's short stories are not for you is fine. Saying that Eudora Welty is a shitty short story writer is, I don't know where that comes from. That is simply not true. And I don't want you watching that video and maybe think I was on the fence about Eudora Welty. Now I'm not going to read her. If you're in the same position as I am in relation to Shawn's channel, then you rather venerate his reactions to what he reads. You take it seriously. Like I say, I've learned a lot from his channel. I don't want you to be in that position knowing nothing about Eudora Welty and suddenly think, well, she's off my list. I don't want you to do that, because his reaction is just fine. His estimation is simply wrong, simply incorrect. In the same way as if he read the King James Bible and said, boy, you know, the speechifying and the laws and the racism and the sexism and the misogyny, it just doesn't work on me at all. I can't sludge my way through this thing, so I'm going to stop. If he'd said that, I would listen for 40 minutes. If he followed that up by saying there's nothing literarily worthwhile in the King James Bible, in the same way, I would say, okay, I don't know what explains that, but that is just wrong. That is not true. And I don't know what explains it here either. I have to believe, just from what I've seen of Shawn's reaction to other works of literature, good and bad, I have to believe something else was animating that reaction. Now, he will say no. I'm sure he would say no. I'm sure he would say, no, look, I showed you where my bookmark was. I read a lot of these short stories. He says in his video, I consider myself an expert. I didn't just bail after the first one. I didn't even bail after the first one or two that I didn't like. I kept going for a long time. So this is not something else working on me. I nevertheless have to believe that it is. And in Shawn's case, unlike in Juan's case, it makes me sad because I don't get the impression that Shawn revisits stuff that he's written off. I don't think he'll ever go back to Eudora Welty, and that's a shame. Just on a level of just one reader who's never going to go back to Eudora Welty. I'm leaving out the collateral damage, which is that I believe that every time Eudora Welty comes up, he will parenthetically say out loud, on camera and in person, in private, what a terrible author. And who knows who will hear that and maybe believe it. But I had to add a note here to Brian's video and to Shawn's video to wrap up this Megastuff video for the week. A contentious and gloomy note to end on. Next week, I promise I will end on a happier note. But there you go. All the other cool kids were doing this sort of thing. They weren't picking on each other, but this is all I watch is BookTube. So I raised this. I will leave links to all the pertinent stuff so you can go and judge for yourselves. And I'm going to wrap this up as usual. Any kind of a portmanteau video went very long for me, so I'm gonna wrap this up. But I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.